Hey, what's going on, GameLeapers? This is Iggs, and in today's video, we're going to be revealing the 12.19 changes that Riot released just on Twitter. Now, some of these we have actually been through, so if you haven't checked out our 12.19 leaks video, I'd highly recommend doing so. We go through all of the specific changes, so in this video, we'll just be telling you and listing the champions, the items that are actually getting changed. But in our previous video, we detail what those changes are for some of these champions, so yes, check that out. But more importantly than that, guys, if you want to master any of the champions we mentioned in this video, or just get better at League of Legends, our challenger players and coaches from around the world upload daily videos for our subscribers on our website. That is linked in the description and comment section. So if you guys want to improve and reach your peak by the end of season 12, go and check out our website and get that exclusive access to our library of content by signing up. And yeah, let's get into the 12.19 change list. So first of all, we'll talk about the champion buffs. So we'll start by talking about the mid laners who are getting changed, and there are 3 of these. So first of all, we have Fizz, one of the scariest solo queue champions, and whenever Fizz gets buffed, lots of mid laners, and it probably is justified, are going to be a little tilted, because why does a good champion like Fizz need buffs? He performs well in every single elo and solo queue. Well, the problem for Fizz is this: if you do main Fizz, you know that you have to go a mana mythic, right? You have to go Lost Chapter into Luden's Tempest, and on Fizz you don't really want to have to build this. It's more for like control mages, right? You are an assassin, you want to build Rocket Bell, you want to build Night Harvester. So what Riot have done, they've reduced the mana cost in your E. Now they have also increased the damage here as well, which is maybe the most questionable thing, but I actually think the mana buff, hopefully this will open up builds where you can actually build like an assassin, not like some sort of control mage who needs mana to be effective. So I honestly don't really mind these buffs, and for Fizz mains, you should definitely be happy with this. But is the E damage increase, is that going to be too much? Probably, but those are the buffs to Fizz for 12.19. Now the next mid laner, a similar champion to Fizz in terms of being an AP assassin, this is Echo. Now Echo hasn't really been that great in the mid lane for ages now, because well, he just doesn't have the wave clear he once had. Even if you take a minion dematerializer, you don't clear minion waves as quick as before, and there are just better champions you can play in the mid lane than Echo. So I don't know what the buff is going to be here, but hopefully it's something that will help your wave clip, because that's really what you've been lacking. Echo in the mid lane as well is a great counter to a lot of champions, so I'm kind of happy here because hopefully this will spice things up, especially in the pro scene. So maybe when we see stuff like Syndra or Orianna picked, Echo gets locked in and he does very well against these champions, so it will be interesting to see what the change is going to be. Now the final mid laner, I cannot believe this is actually happening, and hopefully for my tier list that I create in the future, I don't have to have a Rise tier, because for 12.19 Rise is getting buffed. Now I don't know what these buffs are going to be. Honestly, the champion probably needs another rework, but he is on the buff list, and Rise honestly is probably the worst solo queue champion at the moment, because Riot just cannot balance the champion, because even if he becomes slightly viable in solo queue, in pro play he becomes the most prio pick out of every single champion. So this is really the impossible task. So I'm very interested to see what the buff will be, and if there are any Rise mains watching, let me know in the comments what you want this buff or buffs to actually be. Now heading to the top lane here, we've got 2 champions to talk about in terms of getting buffed for 12.19. Now the first of these is Nasus, and we have detailed these changes in our previous video, so the 12.19 leaks video. So for Nasus, what's happening? Your ultimate's cooldown is going down. This will actually be 90 seconds at rank 3, so at level 16, which is kind of huge, right? Because at that stage in a game, that's when you're strong. And also you will have a lot of ability haste, whether it's from Divine Sunderer, Frozen Heart, your other items, so that cooldown will actually be even lower, maybe around a minute or so, and when you're split pushing, you'll be very hard to deal with. But that's not all, because Nasus's W, so your Wither, is getting buffed too. So the attack speed slow is actually going to be enhanced even more by the actual movement speed slow you put on the enemy champions when you W them. So they're going to be even more crippled. Now for top lane Nasus, this is really good, because a lot of champions in the top lane, they do rely on attack speed to some extent. But what about Nasus support here? This actually opens up Susan as a support, because your W, which is really what you're picking Nasus for as a support, is even better. And if you pair this with like a Frozen Heart Rush, those attack speed AD carries, so stuff like Sivir, stuff like Zeri, stuff like Kalista, Nasus in 12.19 will cut them even harder. Now the other top laner to talk about, this is Udyr, and ever since Riot nerfed your ultimate and buffed your Q, Udyr in the top lane hasn't really been the same. He was actually one of the strongest champions, so the Sunfire Rage's Demonic Embrace combination, it was actually very oppressive and honestly just annoying to play against, because most champions in the top lane who are melee champions just have to copy your ultimate and they can't do anything about it. So nerfing this I think was a good idea, so I'm interested to see what the buffs will be. So these might be some base stat buffs, they might even buff your Q even more. We'll have to wait and see what these are. Again, if you guys made any of these champions and you want some specific buffs, let me know what you guys want in the comments. Now heading down to the bot lane, guys, we've got two more champions to talk about in terms of getting buffed for 12-19. So the only AD carry here, this is Jinx. Now I don't know what the buff is going to be, but let's face it, Jinx ever since she got nerfed at the start of the season, especially when your Fishbone's mana increased, because that was really saving your early game. Jinx in the early game isn't the strongest champion, right? But because she had really low mana cost for using her Q, so the rockets, you could clear waves and you could actually just escape the laning phase without really trying too hard, and you could get to the mid to late game and hyper carry like you're meant to do. But yes, ever since that mana nerf came in, Jinx really hasn't been the same champion. Now I still think she's kind of okay, you can pick her into free lanes and scale into that late game beast, but she's certainly not the champion she once was, and she doesn't have the best win rates in solo queue. So again, I don't really know what the buff will be here, maybe some base stats, it might be something to do with your scaling to make it even better, we'll have to wait and see. And the final champion here, guys, this is Sona. So the only support, unless you want to include Nasus as the support, who's getting buffed. Now Sona getting buffed, kind of an interesting one, because in solo queue the stats, well anyway, they suggest that she's doing very well. So maybe this is a little bit questionable from the balance team. Again, I don't know what these buffs are going to be. Maybe they'll just be completely placebo, we have no idea yet, but make sure you guys subscribe to the channel because in tomorrow's video, we'll probably do a tier list for 12-19, an updated one based on these changes, and I will detail every single change that I have listed in today's video. So those are all the champions that we know about from this list that are getting buffed, but there are also a couple of other buffs in the game. So first of all, Riot have stated here that there are various off-meta builds that are getting buffed. Now these are all the champions that we talked about in our 12-19 leagues video. So we are talking about Blitzcrank, Garen, Kai'Sa, Kennen, Malphite, Nunu, Rakan, Shyvana, Tahm-Kench, and Twitch. Now pretty much for all of these champions, bar Garen, they are getting AP ratio buffs or AP buffs to some extent, right? And because these are off meta, like Blitzcrank AP, that is off meta. Kai'Sa AP, most Kai'Sa players are going attack damage still, so AP I guess it's off meta, and this is just what Riot are looking to improve, and it might actually make the game fun again. Like if these off meta builds become something you can actually build in a real game without trolling, then it opens up a bit of variety and diversity onto the Rift, which I think is a good thing. Of course, the odd one out here is Garen, and I'm sure you guys tilted at the change coming into Garen, so your critical strike chance, that is going to scale more into your Beyblade, so your Judgment, your E, you're going to do more damage based off your crit. And this is linked into the final buff here to Mortal Reminder. So for Garen, Mortal Reminder after your Strike Breaker and Berserker Greaves, that's the item you're buying, right? So Mortal Reminder getting buffed, with Garen's crit getting buffed, 12-19, it might just be permaban Garen, unless you just want to get Hearthstone by it. But Mortal Reminder also affects other champions, of course, so anyone who relies on a bit of attack speed and crit and can actually get out the heal reduction to multiple enemy champions, so maybe Yasuo, maybe Yone, lots of AD carries of course, so this does indirectly buff other champions as well. So those are the buffs. What about the champion nerfs, guys, for 12-19? Well, there are two of these, and it makes me so happy to say this, that Master Yi, the Wuju Bladesman, the most obnoxious, uninteractive, no counterplay champion in the game, is getting nerfed. Now, if you do main Master Yi, please don't hate on me, but the fact that Riot increased your attack range by 50, and also made it so that you can decide where you end up out of your Alpha Strike, you have got to give me a break. So finally, Riot are nerfing a champion who is picked and banned so much, way too much, because of how broken he is. Again, I don't know what the nerf is going to be, so we'll have to wait and see. Maybe it might be a revert of the attack range. Maybe they just completely eliminate the fact you can actually decide where you come out of your Alpha Strike. That would be nice, and maybe make it more fair for everyone else in the game, so stay tuned for that. And the other champion, another jungler who's getting nerfed, and unfortunately it's not Belveth, but this is Rek'Sai. So Rek'Sai, particularly in high reloads, has had like the best win rates for I don't know how long, maybe even the entirety of season 12. And again, I don't know exactly what these nerfs are going to be. Maybe it might be something to affect your early game so you're not as powerful. You still want an early game though, because that is your champion's identity. So yes, I am just guessing here, but we'll have to wait until tomorrow to see what that infamous balance team is going to do. Now, as far as champion adjustments go, we talked about Syndra in our 12-19 leagues video, guys. And if you haven't already heard, I'm just going to give you one change to kind of know what you're going to be dealing with in 12-19. Syndra's ultimate, if you have 15% of your max HP, so your health bar, if Syndra presses her R on you, you insta-die. You just get executed. I don't even think this revolves around how many spheres she has on the ground, because at the moment anyway, the current iteration of Syndra, that enhances your ultimate's damage. So I don't know if she just presses R on anyone, regardless of how many spheres she has on the ground, they just die. So honestly, that could be the most ridiculous change of all time if it does go through. And if you want the rest of the Syndra changes, again, make sure you check out our 12-19 leagues video. Now, the final change to talk about in 12-19 is the nerf coming into Eclipse. So Eclipse at the moment is built by a lot of champions, right? So even AD carries, even top laners, even mid laners, junglers. If we think about Draven, if we think about junglers like maybe Graves, if we think about mid laners, any assassin can go this item. And in the top lane, of course, we have the big bad Aatrox, among other champions, of course. And speaking of Aatrox, can someone tell me how he is not getting nerfed? So I don't know if Riot can actually change Eclipse or nerf Eclipse specifically, like just for Aatrox, and not nerf anyone else. So I think other champions, maybe even champions who aren't that strong, are going to be affected by this. It seems a little unfair just to nerf the Mythic rather than Aatrox himself. Again, I don't know the reasoning behind this, but it does kind of make sense to me because, yeah, Aatrox you could even argue is the most dominant champion in League at the moment. But those were the listed changes, and we went into some of the changes that we actually know about for 12.19, guys. So let me know again down below what you think of these upcoming changes and the potential ones. If you did enjoy the video, please remember to leave a like down below. And until tomorrow's probable tier list that we will do based on the real changes, this has been Peace.